right, so what I'd like to take a look at now is another form of subtle activity that results in Kuzushi. It's very interesting. It happens strictly as a process of incremental change over a long period of time. So you have somebody in normal stability. Damon's in good stability here. And we have a form of connection of some kind. We're tied together in some way, shape, or form. And we're going to start way back here on this blue spot back here. Yeah, there we go. And as he walks forward, I'm just going to walk backward with him in a symmetrical fashion so that each step I take, the feet are landing at the same time. And so when you have a process like that where the bodies are hooked together in some way, shape, or form, and everybody's feet are acting in symmetry, and that symmetry is matched, you have a very even process. You can see this if we're going sideways. We're taking side steps. If we walk sideways together like this, and we're all together, or if we turn, I'll turn at the camera, we walk sideways like this. Yeah, as he takes his step, I'm just staying in symmetrical balance, stepping with him. My feet are landing at the same time and in relative distances, close approximation to the distances that his center is traveling. We're staying basically symmetrical. We know that Kuzushi is a form of asymmetry, but there's a subtle way of affecting asymmetry over a series of steps so that any given activity of going towards asymmetry again happens pretty subtly. So if he's taking a series of steps, his right foot comes, and I go with his right foot with my left and right. Just by altering the fact that I'm getting out of step with him so that I'm stepping at the opposite leg each time, you start getting this weird torsion feeling. It's very strange, huh? So there goes your right foot. It's really odd. You're like, hey, how come, are we doing the samba or something? That's one way that it happens, is that the feet get off-footed, or they get into an opposed relationship on each time. Another way is to get in step with him just in the normal way, so he's walking and I'm walking, but then on each step I just stretch slightly until at the end the stretch is further than he anticipated. So if we're walking sideways again, if we're in symmetry and we're slightly and slightly more and slightly more until as each foot lands, instead of stretching it a large margin on each step, I just stretch it a little margin. And then on the next step, another little margin. And the next step, another little margin. So in effect, it's very difficult for his nervous system to pick up the change. Again, it's happening ideally beneath the threshold of what he can organize himself around to dampen or react to. This can happen when the feet are going in that symmetrical way parallel like we just did. We can do this by expanding that parallel line subtly or converging that parallel line subtly. So we could be walking in this sideways fashion, and over a series of several steps, as it's happening, I just start subtly stretching and diverging until, until his posture is going forward. And if I do it well, if I do it incrementally well enough, it'll have the effect that the uke will wind up at the end of the process standing there going, well, how the hell did I get here? Why am I bent over? They'll never feel it come on. It'll be like the frog on the hot plate. The incremental change happens so tight underneath the threshold of awareness that the little changes that are building up just become, isn't that weird? Just become catastrophic by the end. So stretching the step slightly, expanding so the two bodies start moving subtly further and further apart over a series of many steps, or converging over a series of many steps. So he can be walking at me, and as he's walking at me, incrementally, he just winds up collapsing into me, because as I'm walking with him, he's getting the sense that I'm going with him, but at the same time, everything's starting to collapse. I'm starting to enter his space a little bit at a time. I'm just not taking quite as big a step with him. And he's getting all crowded here. And his nervous system has a problem with that. Same thing if I expand it. Symmetrical, not symmetrical, more not symmetrical, more not symmetrical, more not symmetrical, until at the end the effect gets very broad. So you start with symmetry, and then you slowly distort it over a series of incremental moves into the asymmetry, rather than one foul swoop. That's a whole nother way of approaching creating asymmetry for Kuzushi in a fairly subtle manner. This happens even on the small scale. Let's say we're hooked together at the wrist, and I'd like to go towards, something like, kotegai, since that's the standard thing. But rather than just grasp his wrist and twist it here, I'm just going to hold on to it, and as we move around in space, just give it subtle little cues, little light touches. My palm turns up, and so his palm wants to turn up. And now I just hand it off, and again, little light touch, little light touch, little light touch. And you go, wow, over the course of many, many, many steps, we're in kotegai, but did you ever feel me turn your hand over? No, because I never did. I held his hand, and as we moved around, I just turned my hand over. And because my hand turned over, his wanted to turn over. But I never tried to twist on his hand, and now I just hand it off when it gets even. And again, I'm just holding this, and I'm just holding it. Yeah. And so the affect comes on to the man that puts him into the complete asymmetrical function without ever sending signals from the upper body that that's what's going on. This is very subtle, because you wind up in positions of complete torsion like this without any activity saying, oh, here it comes, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to twist it, I'm going to do this to him, which his nervous system can read and readily deal with and begin to react to. Something like this is very difficult to react to. Very difficult. It's just a light touch. And he can tell you, did you ever feel me twist on anything? No. There's no twisting activity in it. It's just a touching activity. And the activity that I do to make the impetus is I just turn my hand over. And again, motor neurons go to work. My hand turns over, his hand wants to turn over. You have very little activities in the body that aren't mirrored. Once the two bodies are hooked together, I'll just begin to turn my hand down as I begin to move with him, and everything starts going into a hole here. Really weird. Really weird. I did not turn my wrist and push down. I didn't try to drag him down. I just rotated my hand, and when my hand rotated down, his wrist bent back and tried to go down too. And so doing that incrementally, several steps, not fast, not hard, not in a single step, but I'm just turning my wrist over gradually. Crazy, isn't it? Yeah. It gets to places where he just can't come back. He just cannot come back from. And he never gets the sensation in the wrists and hands and arms and in the upper body that anything's happening to him, except he's just rolling over and bending over, and why am I bending over? It's a very strange sensation to go through, because that sensory deprivation, that tactile invisibility, as I like to call it, lures him into a space where it feels like nothing is acting upon you, and yet suddenly you're in positions that you did not plan to be in. That's the definition of subtle Kuzushi. So look for that in your play. Again, don't try to affect him so much, affect you, and allow the effect of you to transmit to him in as light and subtle a way as possible. Thank you. Thank you.